Welcome to today's episode of Unbox the Podcast, where I will be sharing with you how a dream can change your life. I'm Sahar Huneidi Palmer, your host, and in this episode, we're going to continue with my transformational journey from the corporate world into the mystical one. I'll be trying to demystify psychic exploration, the meaning of dreams, and healing. Now, self-growth is about self-awareness. Becoming aware of how we feel in our physical bodies, what emotions do we feel, and how we think. Thinking is a conscious process. However, most of our thinking is unconscious, and your dreams are the language of your subconscious mind. Whatever gets into your subconscious gets there consciously, as a wise man once told me, meaning that all your experience in your physical body, whether you're aware of it or not, leaves an imprint on your mind. And your mind, your brain, weaves these imprints into different narratives in how you express yourself, how you talk, how you conduct your life, even in your sleep as you dream. So let me ask you, have you ever had a nightmare and wondered what your mind was trying to tell you? Well, I did. Many of us ignore nightmares as a one-off event. We brush them aside, or we attribute them to some other reason, like overeating just before going to bed, or even some chemical process that's going on in the body because of medication or whatever, and it affects our mind. I'd like to give you a personal example. A few years ago, when I attempted to stop smoking, my doctor prescribed nicotine patches to help with the process. I instantly noticed that my dreams turned into bad ones, or the usual nightmare. And I usually never have nightmares, maybe one or two. Except for the one which I had on that occasion that changed my life. But we'll come back to that later. I say the usual nightmare because sometimes you do get dreams that don't make sense, or you get dreams about what you fear, like spiders, mice, or snakes. It is still a frightening dream, but I would say to a lesser degree than what I call a serious nightmare scale. Speaking of spiders, back in 1992, I dreamt of a rather large black and white spider, just a little bit bigger than a 50-pence coin, or a dirham, and woke up to find that spider near my feet on the floor. It would have been literally just under my feet had I got out of bed. Now that's what I call a warning dream. Back to the nicotine patch. I mentioned my frequent nightmares, which I attributed to the nicotine patch to my cousin, who was a neurosurgeon. And to my surprise, he said, of course, nicotine stimulates the brain, and that dose could have overstimulated your brain. Fair enough, but does it explain the narrative of my dreams? This time, my nightmares were about mice. The Arabic culture makes a distinction between usual dreams and odd dreams. Odd dreams meaning the ones that don't make sense. They're nonsensical. Sometimes, when a dream is so odd that it doesn't make sense, it is referred to as adghas, loosely meaning it's all mixed up and that's why it doesn't make sense. This could be due to stress, interrupted sleep, like sleep apnea, and so on. Other wives' tales say that if you sleep with your backside exposed, you're likely to get a nightmare. Or if you have oily, greasy food before going to bed, the indigestion is likely to cause a nightmare. And many such examples that are thought to trigger, between brackets, evil thoughts. I would tell you that even if all that folklore were true, a dream, be it a nonsensical one or a proper one, is still woven by your unconscious mind. And it uses the language of your own beliefs, whether conscious or unconscious, to weave a story, to conceive a dream. And it is really worth investigating. Dreams also have the power to foretell what's to come. They can give us a glimpse into the future or explain something that has happened in the past. So don't dismiss any. The best way to find out what is your specific personal dream language is to start a dream journal. Keep tabs on your dreams so that you can understand them as life and time unfolds. Your dreams can actually transform your life. By paying attention to the messages that comes through in your dreams, you can prepare yourself indirectly for what may lay ahead. Dreams have an emotional energy. Sometimes you wake up feeling great or feeling not so great. So that emotional charge can prepare you for what's to come, whether good or bad. And that feeling, that energy stays with you. And many of the elders would actually integrate that energy into real life. So if you woke up feeling really happy and you saw a bird, you would stick, a picture of a bird on your wall to remind you of that feeling. If you dreamt of a red rose, you would either wear one or have the picture of it just to remember the feeling, even if you don't remember the dream itself in details. Whether it's warning of challenges to come or a sign of new opportunities on the horizon, our dreams can guide us along our life path. And by the way, for me, the purpose of a psychic reading is just that, to guide us along our life path. And I've always referred to mine as life path readings. The purpose is to guide, to restore self-will, not to foretell and scare you of what might or might not happen. You have self-will, and you must hold yourself accountable for whatever you create. You just need to be conscious. Now, let's go back to the unconscious land, back to dreams. I told my teacher at the time, Marin Jose, about my mice dreams and the nicotine patch. And she said, even though look into what you are scared of and what you're not facing. Work with your dreams. And I did. A few months later, mice did show up in our kitchen, which is really a usual thing in London. There was an open hole behind the oven and mice were looking for food. And they were white mice. So we sealed the hole and the mice disappeared. So those nightmares showed me many things. They exposed issues and, animals, if you will, that I was afraid of. They foretold me about the mice problem in the flat, which I wasn't really expecting because I had been living in a modern apartment block at the time. And they demonstrated how my mind weaves the narrative of my dreams according to my beliefs. I had never stopped to think about mice before then. I didn't know if I was scared of them or not. It's not something that comes up in the desert where I grew up. For me, this was an opportunity to explore what was stored unconsciously in my mind without being aware of it. I was aware, for example, of my fear of going to the dentist, for example, but not of small white mice. My biggest nightmare, however, was so unexpected. It was during a Wednesday night, the morning of Thursday, and Thursday was the last day of the working week. So the weekend was over a Friday. So just before the weekend, I had a dentist appointment in the morning that day, and I shot out of bed screaming and yelling, so much, so loudly, that my sister woke up too. When she asked me what happened, what was the dream, and I described my nightmare, a full military land, air, sea invasion, leaving many dead bodies on the street, burnt all over the place, and literally destroyed the country. She dismissed it. She said, you're just worried about your dental appointment. Go back to sleep. Naively, I did, only to be woken up a few hours later by real-life, full-fledged military invasion that left many dead and burnt bodies on the streets and many buildings destroyed in rubble to the ground. It was my first serious experience of a war, or even of seeing dead bodies all around the city. The town I loved was destroyed to the ground. That was the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, the country I grew up in. But this was the beginning of my psychic experiences. I would describe it as a subtle sense of knowing. That's all it was. And I knew within every bone of my body that this situation was going to last few months. And it wasn't just a skirmish to be overlooked over a few days. And when my family asked, "How do you know?" I just said, "I know. I just know." It was so subtle, but the sense of knowing was so deep that I just took it for granted. This is it. I feel it. We're going to be locked here for 6 months or more. And they all looked at me in shock, because it's so difficult to believe that your life has changed bitterly overnight, 180 degrees. My father ran out to save a shipment that he had going by land. My brother heard the news, went after him, looking for him. They all disappeared for a few hours. By the time they came back, we had all aged 20 or 30 years. You could literally see the gray hair has already appeared. But my point is this. Imagine the possibilities if you were to listen to the wisdom of your dreams. If you were to take into account how your mind weaves the story, you can make better decisions, avoid pitfalls, and embrace the change that leads to personal growth. My life has not only changed, but I didn't know which way to turn. Yet there was an incessant voice saying, "Go to London, go to London." I didn't know how we could manage that with the blockade and everything that was going on, but the feeling was so insistent that I was so determined to get to London, not knowing how I would do that. Next week, I'll share more with you about how this sense of knowing unfolded and how it saved the life of one of our friends and changed my life path to no return. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this episode of Unbox the Podcast. And if you have any suggestions, please get in touch. See you next Tuesday.